Now that the MLB draft is over, the Mets farm system was just ranked number 5 by ESPN. And one of the biggest takeaways was the fact that the Mets had a huge draft and they were one of the biggest winners out of all 30 teams. Now that makes the selection of talent in the Mets farm system a lot more wide than it was last year. So now that we're post-draft, we've got our top 10 Mets prospects in the farm system.
On 3-2, Bader. Swings and misses, strike 3. He struck him out. 5 Met pitchers combined for the second no-hitter in New York Mets history.
Now, I do want to start off with a disclaimer. Khalil Lee and Nick Plummer will not be on this list. They both have had major league experience, even though it has not really been much. We figured that we would like to showcase a little bit more young talent that has not been showcased at the major league level yet.
Yeah, the Mets obviously having a lot of draft picks from external, Kumar Rocker not signing, have an extra first-round pick, and having a bunch of compensation picks, Noah Syndergaard and other free agent losses, surprisingly not because of a certain outfielder, which we will not get into. They had a top-heavy farm going into the draft, and they left the draft now going throughout their top 10 with some great depth. There's still some high potential question marks below it, but arguably say the Mets have 10 very good top 10 prospects, with the top 5 being elite top prospects.
So without further ado, let's get into this top 10. We're going to start off the bottom of the list with Matt Allen. I 100% will be honest. I was very close to leaving this guy off this list. Former second-round pick in 2019 out of high school. He underwent Tommy John surgery last year with a nerve correction, also the following winter. He's got this drop and drive windup with a high three-quarter slot, very similar to Seth Lugo in my opinion. Explosive fastball that can reach 98. With his well above average arm speed, he definitely developed a huge amount of great perceived velocity. He's got a high spin rate curveball with sharp bite. It's very tough against left-handed batters. He's got a late tumble changeup with a firm high 80s velocity, and that goes along with above average control and overall solid command.
Been able to stay on the field, but again, his main thing is he's got the upside of an ace. I had an original comp of Seth Lugo, like you said, with the big curveball, and a pitcher that just came into my head who is known for a pretty good fastball, good velocity, is Freddie Peralta. And this is obviously what you would hope Matt Allen would become. If you hope, and his upside is kind of that, number 2 maybe kind of talent, but like you said, his biggest thing is staying healthy and staying on the field. And didn't want to put him on the list to an extent, but also we know the upside and his raw potential deserves to be in the top 10. But right now we say guys like Jose Budo and Dominic Hamel, who've actually been on the field, could be better prospects than Matt Allen. But again, nothing really he can do, just being with the worst luck in the game.
The main concern that we've pretty much had is we haven't really heard anything from him. We've heard some stories about him throwing this year, but we just don't know if he's going to take the mound. And we've also talked about him possibly being in trade talks because of the upside that he does have, but he has not taken the mound for a long time. That is something that is extremely concerning when you're a highly regarded prospect coming out of high school. At this point, he probably would be 1 year away from being in the Mets starting rotation or being a key piece in their bullpen. Now we get to number 9 overall, a new addition to the farm system, Blade Tidwell. He's 21 years old, this year's 52nd overall pick out of Tennessee. He's a 4-pitch right-hander who is basically scouted to be possibly a longer reliever in the future. Fastball regularly in the mid-90s, but it can touch 98 to 99. Mid-80s slider with a strong sweeping action against left-handed batters. Decent changeup in the mid-80s with well-rounded command. He also has an occasional curveball that he can mix in from time to time. One of the main concerns that had him drop to the 52nd slot was obviously his health. He had a lot of shoulder soreness throughout his most recent collegiate season. I really am a big fan of this guy. I really think this was one of the biggest steals of the draft that we had.
Screams Michael Kopech. Yes, Michael Kopech's throwing 102, 101. That was his big thing coming out of Boston. Gets injured, maybe should have been a first-round pick. A lot of people had him in the mid-20s going in this draft. He falls because of the injury. The Mets take advantage and get him under slot. I think it was at or just slightly below slot money as well. For me, Blake Tidwell, again, we'll see. He just pitched his professional debut today. He threw an inning, got 2 strikeouts, a new walk a guy. Could they use him more as a reliever? Could they use him more of a starter? It's just kind of a wait and see. Can his arm be stretched out coming back after the surgery?
Now we get to number 8, which is Calvinziegler. This guy was kind of shouted over with the Kumar Rocker pick in the first round. He was a second-round pick last year, little over-the-top three-quarter delivery with great controlled arm strength. Fastball in the mid-90s with some great sinking action. it pretty much has a huge balance in between a 4-seam and a 2-seam. He has a low 80s hybrid breaking ball that pretty much gets identified as a slider or a curveball, depending on whether it breaks over the plate. He also is developing a changeup with low spin, but that can also possibly develop into the low 90s with his initial extension that he has with his windup.
Easily my favorite pitching prospect the Mets have in their entire system. This guy was drafted out of the Canadian Baseball League with being a spin rate king. A guy comparable, yes, is this guy maybe a sticky merchant and was the king of it, but James Karinchak is definitely a pretty fair comparison for quarter delivery, kind of delivery similar to Adam Ottavino, which I kind of wanted to throw that in there too. He is kind of that set drop and drive kind of slider. I think Ziegler is the future closer of this team. Like you said, with Tidwell and Allen, I think both of them, all three of them are questionable if they're starters, if they're relievers. I think Ziegler can be that 8th inning guy if Diaz is still here long term, or this could be the future closer of this team. Again, if he develops and his arm can be a starter, it's a valuable asset. But worst case, again, we're talking best case scenario, these guys are all starters and we have arms in the rotation. Pretty good confidence in that this will be at minimum an elite reliever with the potential of being a quality number 2, number 3 starter.
He can be a little bit wild sometimes, obviously with that kind of herky-jerky motion that he has. He can lose control of his breaking stuff. He can lose control of his fastball a little bit, but he is still young. He's 19 years old, so he definitely can continue to work on that. And with his ETA at around 2025, 2026, you definitely won't see him for a while. He's definitely someone to keep your eye on for development through the Mets system. Number 7, Mark Vientos. 2nd round pick back in 2017, scouted as a massive power bat ceiling. He has fantastic bat speed and his ability to spray hit is on par with major league hitters. One of the biggest problems that he does have is the strikeouts, but he's definitely developed more discipline through the minor league system. He is very limited with a DH ceiling. He's just there to hit. Stone hands at third base, can play first base, but does have limited range and below average reaction time. Now, even though it is his main skill, he does seem to sell out for power a lot more than my liking, even though I don't really think he's ready for the majors. If he was, I see him as a very streaky hitter at the MLB level. He can go from completely unstoppable to completely unplayable real quick, and it can flip-flop back and forth.
It's a guy without a position. His position is I can hit the baseball, and contact is kind of his worst thing. He's one of these all or nothing pure power bats. He is similar to a former guy with the Mets who they tried to throw him on the left side of the infield and didn't play well, but it could hit, and that is Wilmer Flores. But I think he's at best one of these guys who you can use off the bench late in the game against the left-handed pitcher and kind of the Darren Ruff role. Is he big league ready now? No. Should we see him in the big leagues pretty soon? I think he'll be the first guy of this list that you will see in the big leagues.
I personally just think that if you bring in this certain approach and bring it up to the majors right now, it might just get eaten alive by major league pitching. Even though he's not classified as a full-on free swinger, he does hit the ball on the ground a lot. He does strike out a lot. And one of my biggest things is that habits that they develop in the minor leagues are extremely impressionable on these young players. And those type of tendencies are what take years and years to try and change. But that type of unestablished all or nothing bat is something that I really do not want to take a risk with. So I don't really think that he would help as much if he were to get called up this year, but maybe he'll prove me wrong. Now, coming in at number 6, we have Ronny Mauricio. This guy was an international signing back in 2017 out of the Dominican Republic. He's a switch hitting 6'3" shortstop that needed a little time to grow into his frame. Insane raw power with fantastic launch angle and bat speed. His plate discipline can definitely be a problem, but like Vientos, he does display power to all fields. He may refuse to walk, but he does cancel that out a little bit with an average strikeout rate. His defense at shortstop has improved over the last few years, about average, but he definitely can make a lot of mental mistakes. But with his size, it's very possible that he could move over to third base or the corner outfield in the near future. That change still has not been made yet. Now, we all know that Ronny Mauricio has been identified as the most tradable asset for a controllable piece. The future is definitely uncertain for him. Again, we don't really know what position he's going to be playing. And plus the block that there is, obviously, with Francisco Lindor here for the next decade.
He is a weird comp because, again, like you say, he's a switch-hitting shortstop with power, average defense. I threw a Bo Bichette kind of comp where a guy who's not going to walk a lot, defense is, he'll make the routine play. But again, the power, he's hit 22 home runs, I believe, this year in Double-A. He's the last remaining member of the Big Three stuck in Binghamton. I don't know how how much longer he'll be there before he joins his other stablemates up in Syracuse. Said maybe he moves to third, maybe you can put him in the corner outfielder, but you really want to put this guy who's average at his primary position and put him in a secondary where he's fall off even worse. Like you said, he's probably the easiest trade chip for the Mets to use.
I personally am not the biggest fan of Ronny Mauricio. I just think he's a little too raw at a age where he's supposed to kind of hit that stride, and I just not really seeing it yet. But I don't really know how long the timeline they're going to stretch it out to. He definitely has a lot of upside, and his ceiling is incredibly high, but he is 21 and he's still showing a lot of weaknesses tool per tool. But all I can say is that with the position he is playing and with the tools that he provides, there's definitely still some concern there. Now let's get to another new addition at number 5, Jett Williams. He was one of our first-round picks out of high school this year. He's a 5'8", undersized shortstop, but an overall outstanding athlete. He can have somewhat sneaky power, but he's best known for his bat-to-ball skills and plate discipline. Great spray hitter with a very balanced and level swing. Defensively, he's well above average with a borderline plus reaction time and range. His athleticism definitely opens him up for a lot of versatility, playing the middle infield and all outfield positions. It is uncommon to have a 5'8" outfielder, but his below average arm strength at shortstop could make the outfield a primary position for him in the future. It's possible to see this guy as a utility man in the future, but we'll definitely see as his minor league career goes along.
Throughout your childhood, the best player usually plays short, and Jett's been the best player on his team. And like you said, he was drafted as a shortstop, but we do expect him to be a primary second baseman, maybe playing a utility outfielder. Sounds very similar for a slap hitter, for a guy who's going to hit a lot of singles and doubles, but has a little bit of sneaky power, which they say he can develop. He screams Whit Merrifield to me. Or a guy you can play him at second, can play him at short, can play him in the outfield. He's going to get you singles. He's going to hit you some doubles, can give you a sneaky homer when you need it. It gives you the positional flexibility. You think of tiny guys, you probably pick him at second base. And again, a guy who can play literally everywhere. Jett screams that just like Whit Merrifield, with the guy who can probably just slap the ball all over the place. He's got a lot of dog in him.
We do have a very similar guy in our farm system, Carlos Cortez, slap hitting type of guy. Very simplified approach, can have some sneaky power, play anywhere. We've seen Billy Epler kind of emphasize versatility. He did that at the trade deadline, and he also did this in this draft of guys who can possibly play different positions. One of his main things was he said that he plays the game the right way. I don't really know what that means, but I mean, we'll just go with it.
Dive hard to second base. Don't bat flip. You hit a home run, you put the bat down, you run to first base. That's my boy Jett. He got that grit. He got that 99 grit and that 99 dog in him.
Now we get to number 4. This is my favorite prospect out of this entire top 10. Alex Ramirez. This kid was an international signing back in 2019. He's just 19 years old and has the potential to be a 5-tool star. His bat-to-ball skills are above average, but he definitely can be a free swinger at times, but he does not sell out with a huge uppercut. Excellent speed on the base path, strong arm that could move him to right field eventually, but he is playing center field at this point. The power did not show up initially for this kid, but he bulked up over the offseason, and ever since then, his average exit velocity has skyrocketed through the roof this year. Every single one of his tools have been scouted in the range and ceiling above average to well above average this season. This guy was killing it in St. Lucie, was destroying that low A pitching. He was called up to Brooklyn just recently, and he's just been mashing just like he was in the lower level. Now, with the loss of Pete Crow Armstrong last year, this is definitely your top pure outfield prospect, and I personally think that he might be a little bit better and a little bit more talented. I really like Ramirez as an all-around player, and I think that he has the potential to be a star.
Owner of the autograph I have ever seen. Hurt losing PCA last year when people didn't realize who this kid was, because like you said, the power didn't come from. Moved to St. Lucie this year, and the power has come. Now he's already back up to Brooklyn. I put a comp, which is maybe my wildest comp, because this kid's, again, 19 years old. This kid still has an ungodly amount of potential, but he kind of screams a little bit of Ronald Acuna in me, where he's got the 5-tool ability. Defensively, he's playing center field. Alex hits the ball hard, and it's going to go far. Strikeouts are obviously a big thing for him, which he's got to clean up, but he has two other levels to clean that up and let that develop. He has the most raw potential out of anybody on this list, where he could be the next Fernando Martinez. He could be the next Ronald Acuna. Probably could be the most special. You could see a situation in a few years if this kid continues to develop to being one of the best center fielders in the game.
He looks like he has the ceiling to become a more disciplined hitter. We saw a lot with Ahmad Rosario, where he had this long uppercut swing. This guy has a very level, very calm, very relaxed relaxed type of swing. I personally believe that you probably could see this kid in AAA by the end of next year. You could see this guy up here at a very young age, maybe age 22, age 21. The ceiling is so high for this kid that he can be a generational type talent if he continues to get better each and every year. Now, starting off the top three, we have another new addition, Kevin Parada. This is a catcher. He was our first round pick out of Georgia Tech this year. Very unorthodox batting stance, but he gets to the ball better than pretty much anyone in this year's draft class. Near MLB level bat speed, has the ability to hit all triple threat sets, great spray hitter, simplified approach, very smooth and balanced swing. Definitely has some room to improve on the receiver front, but he does have well above average pop time and a strong and accurate arm. Now, even for his size and strength, he still does have that type of ceiling to be a five-tool catcher because of the above average speed and agility that he has. This kid can move. He definitely can do multiple things on the baseball field.
First the Mets had in this year's draft, and was a surprise that he was left on the board, but we found out post-draft it was not because of talent, it was because of money, and the Mets took advantage of taking the higher slot money and giving it to Kevin Parada, where he was supposed to be a top 5 pick. If he does stay at catcher, because there are some beliefs that potentially he doesn't stay at catcher, there are potential that he plays in the outfield somewhere. I see him more as JT Realmuto. He is an athletic catcher. A guy, this isn't going to be a catcher where slower than molasses. He can hit the ball really far, but he can barely leg out doubles. Like, this guy has some athleticism behind the plate defensively, and then on the base pass, we saw he just broke the Georgia Tech home run record. But worst case, he's a guy who can move to the outfield and give you some more outfield depth. Again, we really don't have any outfielders besides Abraham. They went cheaper with Jett in the second round to do this, to take him in the 11th pick. So Parada, again, easily slides in the top 3. And this is where Abraham started it, where you're talking Abraham and above. We're talking about key franchise pieces for the Mets.
One of the biggest shockers was the Mets drafting Kevin Parada. And then there is another catcher who is currently the best prospect in all of baseball. We'll get to him in a second. The whole key to drafting, especially in the first and second round, is you take the best available. And this was the best available in Kevin Parada. This guy was projected to go top 5, possibly even top 3. So the Mets definitely went with the overslot here. And I think that this is somebody who you can definitely pair up with the other catcher, or he also can provide you some other skills because he's so versatile with all of his tools. Coming in at number 2, we've got Brett Beatty, third base prospect. He was our first round pick back in 2019. As we are filming this, he is currently debuting in AAA as he was just called up, killing it in Binghamton this year.
He said, "This is my guy. This is the prospect that I've fallen in love with ever since the Mets decided to draft. I've made 3 videos about him." You finally started to see a lot of people were complaining about the ground ball rate in 2020. Oh, blah, 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 blah. And all Brett did was work off in the offseason. And the biggest question, which everyone's, was the power. And we knew this kid was a big, lanky, 6'3", big Texas boy. And it was just a matter of time. Defensively has improved, which again, I always thought he'd be a little bit of a below average defender. Defense is a little bit above average. I've started to say is the hitting coach of the New York Mets right now, and Eric Chavez, again, left-handed guy who can finish to hit 25 homers, good defense. I found another comp that I just thought of while we're recording this video, and I think it is a good comp, which if he is this, God, I would take it, and that being Evan Longoria. If Brett can be an above average to very good defender, which he continues to get better defensively, the offensive capabilities of Brett Beatty is ungodly, and potentially to be a generational all-around player.
And then we get to another position that's become quite the graveyard, and this is our chance to finally put the terrible catchers to bed with our number 1 prospect, Francisco Alvarez. This kid is a mini fridge. He completely destroys baseballs. He was just recently called up to Syracuse. Started off struggling a little bit, but he was walking, showed a little bit of discipline, and now he's starting to destroy the baseball.
He's the number 1 prospect overall in baseball now. Again, you're getting a bat. And this is why I think he is Salvador Perez. I think the 35, 40 homer potential from him. Defensively, you just hope he's average. The bat of Alvarez outweighs the defense, in my opinion. 40 homers, driving 100, protect Pete Alonso would be the actual protection that Pete needs. But if you put a legit protection behind Pete, and that potentially have a 3-4-5 in a lineup being Lindor, Alonso, Alvarez, Beatty, that is a devastating meat of a lineup that nobody would want to face.
He definitely would be in the majors right now. He's 20 years old, and he's definitely a special talent, but he just plays the catcher position. And they're just really looking at his defense and seeing that if he can catch AAA, then he can catch the major league. His defense has definitely improved recently. He's actually become one of the best defenders in all of AA. I cannot wait for this kid. I am so tired of James McCann. I'm so tired of Tomas Nido. I'm tired of pretty much every catcher that we put out there for the past 10 years. And he is a special type of player only at 20 years old.
I mean, yeah, like if you look at the general mass media being like, oh, this farm system sucks. Now the Mets legit top 4 being top 100 prospects and literally the top 2 being top 20. And I think Parada, once that update next year, could be in the top 75 in prospects of baseball. So the Mets got a lot of for having a crappy top-loaded farm system. Now 1 through 9, you're finding quality, MLB quality. Simone Juan, we didn't talk about potentially being, we don't know what his raw potential could be. You know, we like Jose Budo. Dominic Hamill has had some decent starts in Binghamton. So the Mets farm system, which was a weakness, is becoming a strength very slowly. And like the Dodgers didn't become a dynasty overnight. It takes a while to develop a farm system. And I'm glad, I'm happy. I mean, yes, would I've loved them. Maybe trade a piece or two this year at the deadline, but they are slowly but surely rebuilding this farm to do maybe what the Padres have done over the last few years. And that's just going crazy, adding big league talent.